Hello everybody, SlimKirby here, and I'm going on a long journey of trying to complete every single Game Boy Advance game in North America. This is the story of the highs, the lows, and all the silly stuff in between for the Game Boy Advance completion experience. This is GB Ace. Game number 22, Chicken Little. It's about time we got back to some licensed movie games. It's honestly been a bit since the last one. I know we had some other licensed stuff here and there, but I don't know. There's just something about this kind of licensed stuff that just hits different, where you go into a game and you don't really know what to expect, although usually it's lower expectations as opposed to higher ones. At least for Dragon Ball, fighting is a pretty big premise for that narrative, so making it a beat-em-up slash fighter for that license was a pretty free choice. But what the hell are you gonna do with Chicken Little? Well, let's find out, I guess. Chicken Little released in October 2005 to all the major game systems of the time, so GameCube, PS2, Xbox, PC, and Game Boy Advance. However, due to the nature of the Game Boy Advance, as you might expect, the game was developed by a different studio for the handheld iterations, with the console versions being handled by Avalanche Software, and this version being done by Artificial Mind and Movement, a studio that might be better known as Behavior Interactive these days, the devs behind Dead by Daylight. And for the publisher, we have Buena Vista Games, a company I'm sure we'll be more acquainted with as we go through this challenge, as they'll likely be involved with a number of the multi-platform Disney games, seeing how Disney's corporation is in Buena Vista, Florida. So, what do I know about Chicken Little? Well, aside from the fact that he's a chicken, he's little, and he was a summon in Kingdom Hearts 2, and he was also voiced by Dr. John Dorian himself, not much. Yeah, I didn't see this movie when it first came out, probably because, well, being over 16 years old was likely a huge part of it, but even beyond that, I don't feel like it was very highly acclaimed, so it just never really went on my radar in the first place, nor do I really have any interest in it now, so yeah, going in very blind for this one. This game is mostly a platformer, but it does feature some alternate forms of gameplay throughout the main story mode, and also includes two separate side modes, which I will talk more about once we finish the story in general. There is no difficulty selection either, just one static difficulty throughout the game, so our basic goal here is to just beat the game and draw the credits. Does that sound good to you guys? Well, it sounds good to me, so here we go. The very basic story premise here is that Chicken Little is a sheltered little boy chicken who lives in the town of Okie Oaks with his father. He's sheltered not because he needs to be, but after a mysterious event referred to as the Incident, Chick's father feels it's necessary, as the two are constantly bothered and pestered by reporters and photographers who won't stay the hell out of their lives. The first level begins at their house, and it's a rather simple level that has no enemies whatsoever, and is really just one giant glorified tutorial on how the game is supposed to work. I actually kind of thought this was a decent way to introduce everything too, as the game does provide small samples of instruction without getting super handholdy about it either. Enough where if you can figure out everything by yourself, you can just proceed as you wish, but if there is something holding you up, it can at least nudge you in the right direction if you haven't realized all of what your character can do just yet. It's kind of like how modern Kirby games introduce their controls in the first levels, so you can probably tell that I appreciate that approach in this game too. As far as general gameplay, there is really not much to unpack here. Chicken Little can move, jump, perform a very intense looking ground pound with his head, and in this level in particular, he will obtain his yo-yo, which will be utilized as his main form of combat and interacting with the environment, using it to attack enemies, knock over obstructions, twist-turn handles, and even reach collectibles from a distance. Speaking of collectibles, you'll notice that I'll be collecting a lot of acorns throughout the course of this game. Acorns are the main collectible here, kind of like coins in the Mario games, and although collecting 100 won't get you an extra life, collecting a lot of these do have some benefits, and more than that, each level actually keeps track of how many you collected in each level. And if you go back to that level, previously obtained acorns will not appear, meaning you only have to get ones you hadn't gotten yet. Probably a very nice touch for 100% completionists. See, Yoshi's Island, you don't always have to aim for absolute perfection on every run. I still love you though. So, what are the acorns for exactly? Well, in between levels you can visit the town's general store and purchase stuff throughout your adventure using these acorns. Will this stuff help you throughout your adventure? Maybe. Okay, so really you can just buy health upgrades for each controlling character, and that's really about it. Everything else is basically just extra cosmetic options or features for the game's side modes, so probably not really worth it in the grand design of everything. But still, I do welcome the leniency with the collection aspect, especially considering how tricky it can be to find all these acorns to begin with. Sure, the first level isn't too bad since there's not a lot of places to look and there's only 50 to obtain, but late game levels will have up to around 200, and some of the areas can be absolute maze-like with different paths on different elevations and sections hidden underground, some of which may take multiple playthroughs to even find in the first place. When it comes to this collectible design mentality for me personally, I can either take it or leave it. I'm actually more fond of the standard star coin method featured in modern 2D Mario platformers, having just a relatively small number of objects to collect in each level that have more distinguishable locations and hiding spots. But I think in the context of this game, it's harmless just because I wouldn't say it's super necessary to get all the acorns anyway. But the challenge exists for those who want to go for it and go that extra mile. In other words, definitely not a goal for me in this playthrough, but I will see what I can do in a casual sense. Anyway, getting back to the game, after a quick jaunt around the house and restoring power to the house's garage door, Chicken and his father are able to leave the house and get this adventure going. However, now it's time for Chicken Little to go to school, so off to school we go. Along the way though, we do really start to see the type of life Chicken Little has to lead, and dang, there are a lot of photographers and paparazzis around, pretty much waiting at every stretch of the town. Thankfully though, we can use our yo-yo to make very quick work of these pests. This level also introduces us to a new form of gameplay, where if we collect a giant token with a picture of Chicken on it, Little will change into a much larger fowl named Captain Ace. In this form, yeah, we ain't so little anymore, and we can proceed to give the beat down to enemies and other obstructions in our path for a short period of time. Although these sections aren't not much to speak of right now, in fact I'd say a good number of them are optional anyway, we'll see more of Captain Ace a bit later in this story. We make it to school, but let's just say our harassment doesn't exactly end on the streets, as even the local school children give our chicken boy hell when a bully named Foxy Loxy steals our yo-yo, and now we have to face off against her in a dodgeball match to get it back. And yeah, we actually play some dodgeball here. Now, I have to say, this minigame was honestly not too bad. It's no dodgeball from Mario Sports Mix, but I think it gets the job done on a very basic level. I don't really utilize it here, but the best strategy to use is to throw the ball quickly to your teammates and then toss it at your opponent to catch them off guard. If you time your throws in a nice quick successive manner, the ball will launch super fast and do a lot of damage in the process. Of course, since we are super awesome at dodgeball, Foxy has no chance and we win our yo-yo back. Afterwards, we meet a few other characters, including Abby, Little's love interest I guess, and we make plans to go see a movie later. After a super important baseball game, of course. The next level we have is the baseball field, and yep, we're even getting tormented here too by the non-stop photographers and people who will just not stay out of Chicken Little's life. Seriously, can't we just get a restraining order against the entire town at this point or something? Because this is ridiculous and a total invasion of privacy. Anyway, this level is pretty similar to the last level we did, just a bit longer, more acorns to get, and a more complicated underground tunnel system, but aside from that, there really isn't too much to say about this one. We make it just in time for the game, and we find out that we actually get to play today, even though it's as the absolute last hitter. As Chicken Little says though, a chance is all we need to succeed, so he approaches the game with optimism, hoping he can use a good result to wash away the failure of the incident. However, we don't actually get to hear about the results of the game, at least not yet anyway, as we are whisked away to the next level at the movie theater. Now, we did have plans to meet Abby here later, but this is not exactly what this level contains or features, because this is our first full Captain Ace level. So, while Chicken Little is warming the gameplay bench, Captain Ace takes full control here as he seems to be investigating and making his way through an alien base of some kind. While the beginning makes this feel like a standard Captain Ace gameplay at first, as we make our way through this place, we find a blaster gun that Ace can use to pretty much aim in all directions, turning this into less of a platformer and more of a run-and-gun action game like Contra or Mega Man. Although, obviously not as intense as Contra. Now, these levels were actually pretty cool, and probably my favorite parts of this game. Definitely on the easy side, but everything felt pretty responsive control-wise, and even the acorns weren't terribly hard to find either, so this was pretty fair and manageable. I wish I could say the same for the boss fight, though, and pretty much every boss fight this game does feature. I don't know, taking down these guys was just awkward, and a large part of it is due to the fact that in this arena specifically, you have to walk around the perimeter of the room, even on the walls and ceilings, and every time you turn the corner, it's just a really awkward shift in movement and momentum. This makes it really easy to get hit by rotating projectile attacks, and not to mention that aiming at his weak point can also be a bit of a chore to do from sideways or upside down positions and angles. I actually died on this boss several times trying to get used to the mechanics and physics, several attempts ending just as it only had one hit left. It was definitely frustrating for me. I did get it down after a while though, but still, definitely one of the game's low points. After the level is done, we get updated on what's been happening with our main protagonist, who apparently hit the game-winning run when he did finally get up to bat. Wow, it's a shame we missed every single bit of that and had no controller impact on that happening whatsoever. Oh well, at least we can finally whitewash the incident with a more fun story of heroism, which we do kind of find out a little more about what happened in the process. Apparently one day, Chicken Little was struck by something in the head from above, something that only he was able to see, which caused him to start claiming that the sky was falling. Because of this, I guess everyone else didn't believe him and started thinking he was crazy as a result, and that's pretty much why newspaper reporters and photographers keep following around and won't leave him alone, to see if they can get any more dirt on the kid who continues to insist the sky is literally falling to the ground. Ugh, see? Even in this world, the media continues to be a thorn in all of our sides, huh? However, this temporary breath of fresh air is not short-lived, as it seems like more stuff is coming down from the sky, and it turns out what Chicken Little actually saw were aliens trying to come down and make contact. Little doesn't seem to be alone in thinking this now, as it does seem like some of the other kids are on board and a weird little fish guy manages to sneak onto the alien mothership to find out what is exactly happening and going on with these extraterrestrials. The gameplay decides to shift once again, but this time we're controlling the fish guy I just mentioned, as he literally rolls around the entirety of the next level on a skateboard. Maybe it's a good thing we played Tony Hawk's Pro Skater before this after all. Our training may actually find some use here. Okay, it really doesn't, but not much to say about this level regardless. You just kind of roll around, grind on grind rails, and try to make it out of half pipes on your quest to find the level's exits, and that's pretty much it. Although, I will say, I experienced an interesting glitch when I first started this level. Yo, we're fish! I don't know if we're supposed to be up here? Yeah, I just kind of slipped through the floor into out of bounds, and the game didn't know where to put me, so I was just kind of above the level for the rest of the room. But since there were no transition planes up there, I was pretty much soft-locked. Thankfully, a start menu quit was enough to get out of the situation, but still, a very weird glitch, and not one I could really even replicate either. Gotta love when stuff like that happens. We're back with Chicken Little again, and now we're running through the cornfields to escape the aliens and warn the rest of the town about the attack. The enemies do get a little more aggressive now, especially since they're not attacking with cameras, but still, relatively par for the course, I'd say. We do also learn that we can use Little's yo-yo as a grappling hook of sorts, which controlled okay, I guess, but I wouldn't say it really added too much to the gameplay. Still though, it was nice to see that the games was still introducing new gameplay ideas to the equation, as every level had at least a new gimmick of some kind to capitalize on, and none of them were really that intrusive either. We make it to the loudest bell in town and give it a nice old ring to let everyone in town know about the aliens' invasion. Our dad freaks out that another incident is happening again, but once the aliens become more obvious, he's a little more inclined to believe us now, thank God. This takes us into another stage with completely different gameplay, the racing mode of this game. Now, this level is less of a race and more of just a get to the goal in the time limit sort of affair, as we are still trying to get away from the aliens. This was another low point for me in terms of the story mode. The car driving doesn't control badly or anything, even though I am probably more accustomed and fond of the behind-the-back racing games, but what really made this annoying was the ridiculously tight time limit, and the aliens who are seriously relentless in trying to stop you from getting to the goal. Seriously, the aliens in the red UFOs are literal snipers and sharpshooters, and you seriously have to bob and weave like crazy to avoid their fire, because every time you get hit, even though your car can't be destroyed, your vehicle's stats and top speeds will take a plummet, making it even harder to get to the end. You can fix damage by grabbing wrenches on the track, and you can also use a turbo boost to go faster, which you can replenish by collecting the lightning bolts, but still, even with those additions, I was still getting massacred by these aliens and had a really hard time beating this stage. Heck, in my best attempt, I ran out of time literally at the last second, passing the line just after the losing fanfare started, which still wasn't enough to keep the game going. You just have to do your best with making as few mistakes as possible, using the turbo boost effectively, and taking all the right shortcuts to stay on your game here. And even if you do take damage or get held up by the aliens, just do your best to stay on the track and keep your speed going while also recovering any damage as soon as possible. I actually ended up going to the general store too to see if I could get any upgrades that might make my attempts a little easier. And sure enough, I did buy an upgrade or two for the car, which should have in theory helped me a bit. But I'll be honest, I didn't really notice much of a difference in gameplay, so it may have just been for the side mode and not here to begin with, but I'm not 100% sure. Either way, I did finally beat the racing stage after the fact and was able to move on regardless, so thank God that roadblock is over. Literally. At this point in the story, I admittedly got a bit confused and worried that the game had been bugged because the next level didn't appear on the map screen for some reason. After a bit of creative searching though, I noticed that the movie theater level was actually called Movie Theater 1, and upon selecting it, it turned out that I could also select another stage called Movie Theater 2. Weird that they both shared the same square on the map, but I guess if they take place in the same area, there's probably not much getting around that. Anyway, yeah, it's another Captain Ace level, and this one was honestly pretty similar to the last one we did. You go through the level blasting things, collecting acorns, and performing different feats of platforming. Heck, you can even find a new weapon for the captain as well, and this one is a grenade launcher, which, as expected, can absolutely explode everything near you in fine fashion. A little slower on the firing rate, but the punch it packs will nearly exterminate every enemy in one blow. There's also a boss for this level as well, and this one was also a bit of a pain. Now, instead of walking around the perimeter of the room, you are walking around a small planet in the middle of the room, and the boss will randomly appear and disappear in different locations around the rest of the area, forcing you to move around, aim your shots, and also avoid any retaliation. The attacks in the later phases of the fight also get really hard to dodge as well, so you really have to be on your game to avoid them, so best of luck with that. This didn't take me as long as the previous boss fight, but it definitely took a couple of deaths in the process. It just felt really awkward to move and aim properly, especially when it came to trying to get your attacks off before you suddenly had to dodge again. Also, once again, since I hadn't seen this movie before, I wasn't 100% sure of what these Captain Ace segments were supposed to represent. At first I thought they were just movies that Chicken Little went to go see with his friends, but over time it seemed more like Captain Ace was directly connected to Chicken Little, like it was a superhero that he was playing or something. Turns out, both are kinda true? They are in-universe movies, which is why they take place at the movie theater, but apparently they were movies made in Chicken Little's honor after the events of the movie in question. And everything we're seeing in these levels is basically just a more action-filled retelling of it. Which is why Ace looks like an incredibly buff action hero instead of, well, what he normally does. Also, yeah, apparently Chicken Little's name is actually Ace, so what do you know? Anyway, nearing the home stretch here, we are actually on the final 2 levels of the game. And aside from the stages getting longer and introducing very minor mechanics, I still just don't really have much to say about these levels, or at the very least, the penultimate one. You kinda just keep moving forward until you get to the end, and that's really about it. This level did introduce the mechanic of using bottles of soda to propel yourself into the air to not only make progress, but also potentially get some other collectibles as well. But again, that's really about it. As far as the story is concerned, it seems like the aliens who have come to our planet were looking for a lost child of theirs, which had gone missing by this point, and our protagonist here had actually made that connection pretty immediately. However, you know how parents can be sometimes. They get the wrong idea and think we are trying to kidnap the alien child. They even proceed to catch Little's father and hold him under their captivity until they get their own child back, which means we have to go inside their own headquarters and sort this entire mess out ourselves, leading it to the last level of the game and the final confrontation with the alien overlords. This level, though, with exception of the car racing level earlier, was easily the worst of the game so far. I mean, it wasn't too bad, I guess, but so much of the level was really dark and it gave you limited light to really see what was going on around you. Not to mention, just in general, a lot of the platforming requires you to make the jumps and maneuvers properly, otherwise you potentially fall down to a lower level and have to repeat a process over again. And believe me, some of that repetition got old very, very fast. No joke. And seriously, if you're looking for 100% completion in this game, best of luck scouring this ship for all the acorns, because some of these are hidden very, very well. After making it through a couple of rooms, we finally end up face to face with the alien leader, and he challenges us to a fight. Now, once again, I found this boss fight incredibly awkward, but at least this time we had the luxury of not needing to move in a 360-degree formation, just back and forth and left and right while you avoiding all the boss's attacks and finding the best times to really put the damage in. Now, this boss does have a lot of attacks, but most of them are pretty well telegraphed based on the colors of the eyes. If it's green, it might turn into a bouncing spike ball, but for the most part, they'll be relatively harmless. Yellow means it's about to fire a laser at you that you can avoid by making enough distance away from it, and red means it's going to start launching missiles from above that you have to avoid. Strangely enough though, I actually found red to be probably the best time to attack the guy. Yeah, you still have to avoid the missiles, but if you are lucky, you may actually unintentionally destroy one with your yo-yo anyway, as you continue to aim your furious onslaught upwards. Do consider retreating though if you do see the yellow attack, just because it can kind of catch you off guard when you're trying to spam attacks in. This fight also took me a while to get finished properly, but once I figured out the general strategy for it, it was honestly not too bad. You just really have to know when the best time is to spam attacks, and once you do, you'd be surprised how quickly the help will melt away. Once we beat the alien lord, we finally get discussions moving between the two families and clear up the misunderstanding. We rescue our father, the alien kid is returned, and we return to home where Chicken Little is now labeled as a hero. We share a nice victory smooch with our duck girlfriend, and then the credits start to roll. However, as you can see, I'm not saying the game is complete yet, so we're not quite done with this game. I decided to also show off the extra side games, and there is actually one more thing I can do in the story mode as well, which I'll get to later. As for the side games, they're really just more variations of the racing and dodgeball games we played earlier. The racing game is no longer a timed checkpoint chase, but rather an actual race between 3 other vehicles. It's not too bad, but pretty basic and bare bones. You can unlock a few tracks, as well as reverse variations of those tracks, and you can race in other vehicles too, which probably have different stat distributions. I didn't have too much trouble with this, although the CPU and the fishbowl card did give me a lot of trouble here and there. Also, something funny happened when the school bus got stuck at a certain point and just stayed stuck there for the rest of the race. The dodgeball was a little less interesting, but honestly had slightly more fun gameplay, as it's really just the game of dodgeball and how you would generally expect to play it in a video game fashion. There are more teammates here than there were in the story mode, and you have to knock them all out in order to win the game, but you really just play against different characters from the game in different arenas. You can even play as or against the character Runt, who, well, I'm not sure if playing against him would be an advantage or disadvantage. I guess there is a lot more of him to hit, but he also looks like he could be really broken in the right hands. Not really sure. Also, apparently Captain Ace is playable too, so there's that, and he's very aggressive and can do a lot of damage whenever he throws the ball. I actually played as Foxy because, well, foxes are cool, and she needed to get her vengeance after what happened to her in the story mode. At least I think she did. The only other thing worth mentioning from this is that you can actually get a bunch of acorns from winning races and dodgeball games in these modes, which you can use to unlock upgrades and other cosmetic options for the main game, which now makes sense why the acorn values were so high in the general store to begin with, as they kind of expect you to do a lot with these side modes for some reason. The last thing I want to do before I close the book here on Chicken Little was to play the final secret level of the game, which I found out about through retro achievements. While the secret level doesn't really unlock anything, nor does it really introduce anything exciting either, therefore I could have very much just skipped this level and ended the playthrough like 15 minutes earlier, I was actually pretty close to unlocking it. You see, you can find golden ace statues hidden throughout the game. How hidden? Well, honestly, not very hidden at all. Some of them are in pretty obvious locations, and I honestly would have looked harder for the one I missed if I even remembered it was a thing by that point and knew they unlocked something to begin with. But yeah, I only missed one, and it was in the last level of the game, which honestly didn't surprise me anyway, since that level was kinda hard to get around and see in anyway. Unfortunately, you can't just start and select or leave the level once you get the item though. You do have to finish the level again, so I very quickly got through the rest of it, even finding the rest of the acorns in the process, destroyed the final boss again, and made it back to the map screen where I found out Movie Theater 3 opened up. And yeah, it's just another Captain Ace level, and that's really about it. No awesome new weapon or upgrade for us either, just another jaunt through the alien base. I made it through the level, had another romantic scene with our movie duck girlfriend, and with that, I can finally declare Chicken Little to be a game complete. So, how was this game? Well, it was fine. Perfectly middle of the road. It was nothing amazing, but I didn't really hate playing it either. It was perfectly serviceable and did really all that it needed to do, which was honestly better than I was fearing. You honestly can't really know with licensed games sometimes, and that was a big reason for why I was hesitant. Plus, I gotta be real, it didn't really seem like this movie had a lot of fans based on how my chat was reacting while playing this. And trust me, I'm still not really interested in it myself, even as a Zach Braff fan, but I can at the very least say that they made a decent video game out of it for what it's worth. Heck, even the overall presentation was fine enough. I didn't think the graphics were too bad, although some of the in-game portraits were a little low quality. The game did have some decent music tracks as well, although admittedly some tracks looped probably a lot sooner than what they should have, which sometimes led to cases where this song is good, but probably not one you want to listen to like 50 times in a row. But yeah, overall the game is pretty inoffensive. The Captain Ace levels were easily the best parts of the game, and the worst parts were just the racing level and the story mode, bits of the last level, and some of the clunkiness in the boss fights. If I had to suggest some things to make the experience better, maybe give the acorns a little more meaning to make them more worthwhile to collect. since in their current state, they're literally just expensive health modifiers and cosmetic options. Also, maybe flush out the side modes a little more, since they are still pretty bare bones in their current state, and if you do want to unlock everything, you will likely be playing these modes a lot, so better to give them some more incentive, I think. Getting to the review, in terms of personal enjoyment and overall game quality, I am giving these both scores of 3 out of 5. Like I said before numerous times, very middle of the road, and that pretty much stayed true for the entire experience. In terms of game difficulty, I will say 2 out of 5. In actuality, it probably should be a 1.5, since it is a game where there are literally no major consequences to dying, aside from just starting the room you're in over again, which also, by the way, no extra lives, so no real way to game over. But there were honestly some parts that were a little difficult, namely the boss fights and others that were just a bit awkward to control. So definitely not as free as something like Nicktoons Unite, for example. But yeah, that was my experience of playing Chicken Little. So let's scratch off another licensed movie game from our list, and now take a look at the next game we'll be playing for this challenge. Could it be another licensed movie game? Well, let's find out. Okay guys, thank you for watching this summary. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to leave a comment and or like on the video, as those will really help me in these videos out. And stay tuned for future summaries of this series. If you also want to watch full playthroughs of these games for this challenge, check out the video description for a full playlist of everything that's been uploaded and exported so far. And if you're curious about what I'm playing right now for the challenge, be sure to stop by my Twitch channel to see what my current progress is. Just be warned, I'll be a lot further ahead of where we are for these summaries, so keep that in mind. This has been SlimKirby in the GBA series, and I'll talk to you fine people next time. Later, folks.